Hello and welcome to another episode of the e-commerce coffee break podcast. In today's episode, we want to talk about something that we haven't talked about. It's a relatively new topic. We want to talk about how to future-proof your e-commerce strategy with composable e-commerce. Now, this is new. As said, we haven't spoken about that, and I need an expert for that on this show. So joining me on the show is Pavić. She's the Senior Director of Product Marketing at Kibo, and she is an expert when it comes to this topic. She has a lot of background there, and she will tell about us a little bit about this. And I want to welcome her to the show. Hi, Nat. How are you today?
Hi, Klaus. Very, very nice to meet you. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm delighted to be here.
Nat, normally I don't let the guests tell their own bio, but yours has quite some background, and there's some very interesting parts in that. So just tell me who you are and what you have done.
Well, thank you. So, as you mentioned already, I'm the new product marketing leader here at Kibo Commerce. Very excited to be joining the company and the mission. But I've been in tech for over 17 years. I started very early when I was 19, coding at university for medical imaging. But since then, I've worked at IBM, BlackBerry, Cision, PR, Salesforce, now Kibo, and I've done everything from selling servers to e-commerce. E-commerce is obviously my favorite, most dynamic place I've landed, and I just love it here. It's so impactful. I also have 3 patents, 1 full patent, 2 that are pending. All 3 are AI based. So I'm as well an inventor. And I was a former founder and podcast host of the Commerce Cloud Innovations podcast at Salesforce. And so I will also be launching a podcast here at Kibo. Very excited to bring that to you. So follow me on LinkedIn. Look out for the launch in June. That's the target line. And we're going to have all kinds of thought leaders and speakers come on the show as well. So happy to be here.
Great to have you here. So now let's talk about e-commerce. E-commerce is changing fast. Businesses need to be flexible to find up solutions that keep up with them. And we want to explore a little bit on what composable commerce is, what it is, how it works, why companies should adapt to that. So just tell me or our listeners, what is composable e-commerce?
Okay. So I think there's a lot of confusion in the market. We are all hopefully everybody's familiar with what headless is, but I will define it in any case. So a lot of vendors will have a storefront that they will include in the package. And headless means that you implement the commerce platform without the storefront, meaning that you make your own storefront or your own endpoint. And that can include mobile applications. It can include kiosks. So headless comes in many formats. Composable is actually taking the backend sort of commerce platform and breaking it down. And so being able to purchase it in a sort of piecemeal or set it up in piecemeal way. Now, some people will use composable in the wrong way and just say they have something composable that's not. And some vendors will say that they have something composable, but then they have their APIs aren't well architected and they require 50 more of the existing to the point where of the existing object to the point where you kind of need the whole platform to even have it work. And so the question is it truly composable? So composability is something that sort of emerged as a need within the technical community because people were looking for, I don't want to go all in with one vendor. I don't want to be locked in. I want to be able to pick and choose my functionality. I want best of breed solutions. So it really rose from there. But where it's going is I think it's going to be imperative in the future. And I think that there's lots of challenges along the way. I think people are kind of hitting some roadblocks in terms of the solutions that are available out there, which we are slowly solving, I think, as an industry. But it's going to be really important for the new agentic future because we have, agents don't want to go on your site and scrape the UI. They want to have direct access to APIs. And so composable solutions by definition are well architected, have better APIs. So they're more positioned, I think, to win in an agentic future. So I think, Gartner has us in the trough aspect of the hype cycle, but I think will be key in making the agentic leap. And so I think composability is going to become even more important moving forward for that reason.
Now, I remember I think it was about 2 years ago, headless was the big topic and everyone was jumping on headless. And then sort of it went away. I'm sure it's still there, but people are not talking as much on it. You briefly talked about the differences. Now, how is it, or how can you move from either a all-in-one platform or a headless platform into a composable architecture?
That's a great question. So here at Kibo, we have something that I'm sort of softly calling integrated composable, which means that you don't have to, replace your all-in-one solution initially or even ever. So I think that there's a huge emphasis in the market in terms of like incremental innovation. People just don't have the ability to do big bang transformations anymore, or they're being asked to defer those big bang transformations. That's just not the reality anymore for like retailers and brands and companies out there. And so, what we offer is that you keep your all-in-one, but you can augment or move some aspect of your all-in-one solution to our composable tech stack. And so you kind of get this like best of both. Like it's basically a spectrum. You can be all-in-one, or you can be completely composable, or you can be somewhere in between. And so really, we feel that customers need choice. This it's just really how the only way that they can innovate in this new environment where they're not being asked to rip and replace everything.
I like the approach. Not every company grows in the same way. There's different priorities. There's not a standard operating procedure to grow a company. And now with Uncomposable, if I understand you right, you have the flexibility to start from different areas within your business using that. Can you give me some examples what that can be?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, we have a lot of microservices. So everything within the product is separated into microservices. Even if you're purchasing, OMS or commerce, there are joint microservices that are shared. So you could, for example, just buy the catalog, or you could just buy the order management or the order and fulfillment management. And you can have just that aspect of your existing solution go into Kibo. You could possibly also, let's say you were buying our search. We have this amazing vector search that not a lot of people know about. And search is an interesting topic because you have everything from synonym search, which is the most basic search, to affinity search, which is highly personalized. A vector search is somewhere in between. And if we need to, I'm happy to define what that means. But you can sort of go far with that. It's such an under optimized resource for most retailers. So you could possibly get that and get that with catalog and be able to port over your catalog objects. So you maintain your PIM or whatever you're using, but be able to leverage us for search, for example, with some light commerce features. So that's like sort of like one way that you could do it. You could also do the same thing with subscriptions. You could leverage our subscriptions and then pull in some other features where you're just sort of mirroring what you currently have. So it kind of works with Kibo functionality. So those are all excellent examples where you can start to uplift and up level your current experience without having to completely replatform.
Where do you see the point for a business to really think about composable and go that route?
It all depends. And I've even heard customers say they actually chose composable, chose headless because they had a skeleton crew, which was surprising to me. So you want to have the ability to say, do post-purchase order modification so you don't lose the customer. So you're reducing conversions. So I would say probably middle tier. You probably are not going to, you're not going to go composable if you're a mom and pop shop. So as you sort of like move up market, or you're sort of mid-tier company, that's sort of where you're going to consider it. But actually, your team doesn't have to be very big to go composable. It used to be that you needed a lot of developers to be headless, but now with solutions like Kibo and tools out there, you don't. You may need a fewer developers actually, because if you are building on React, which is a more common framework, right, then you don't have to up-level everybody on specific a vendor specific way of coding. You don't have to teach them a different language the way that you might with some other vendors. And so you're actually going to be able to tap into a bigger talent pool of developers that already are writing React, Node.js, already creating headless applications. And so it might be easier for you to find the talent that you need, and you don't have to invest in the training to give them access or knowledge to proprietary information. And then you might have fewer developers because they're going to learn and upskill that much faster. And I've actually heard that sometimes templates slow people down because in order to, once you start to get into that, okay, I don't want my site to look the same like everybody else's, you start to become more competitive, then you realize that existing templates may lock you in to a certain look and feel, and your site may look exactly like everybody else that's using that same system. So once you start to want to become more customized, more unique, have a different value prop, optimized for conversions, you start to actually hit a wall with templates. This is where it becomes better, and you might actually customize those templates so heavily that now it becomes even more complicated to manage around those templates, right? This is where you want to like kind of break free from that. And that's where you want to go headless and say, listen, here are the APIs. Here's our commerce engine. Let's get creative. Let's have the site that we truly want. And then we can own our own architecture and we can port that site over if we ever want to swap anything in the back end.
hmm No, that makes perfect sense. A lot of brands want to go a different route and not being locked into a template, which brings me to the topic of customer experience. Now, obviously, we were talking about a lot about the back end and what you can do there. How does Composable Commerce help with the customer experience?
Oh my gosh, huge. And and I just want to clarify, when you mean about customer experience, are you talking about post purchase or are you talking about during the purchase?
During the purchase.
During the purchase. So I'm really interested in this like commerce anywhere paradigm that's really taking off. I've even, I've seen this a few years ago. I was talking about shopping on your TV. So for example, now we have all these smart TV. We're moving away from cable. We have all these smart TVs. We have Apple TV as an example, Roku. So let's say I have my Apple TV. I have what's tied to that? My Apple Wallet, my iCloud, right? So why can't I, during a commercial, just add something that I'm seeing to cart? And this is where headless comes into play. If you want to kind of enable those experiences, you need to have really well architected APIs. And there's a huge difference between being API first and being API performant, what I call performant. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a catalog API. Depending on how that catalog API might work, you might need, every time you create a new category, it should have the capacity to pull in the API for that category and automatically display it for you on your website. There are some platforms, which I shall not name here, where you create that new category, API, but your catalog API isn't made to serve up that information. So now, in order to display the category in the front end, you actually have to redevelop the front end, which is insane, right? And so this is the thing, is that people will just hand wave and say, yeah, we have APIs. Don't worry, we're API first. API first is not a useful category for me. Is it API performant? Do your APIs function in the way that I expect it to? Because there's a huge difference between having an API infrastructure for commerce platform. And, commerce has always been very dev heavy, front end heavy because of that front end aspect. So you just need the APIs to function at a much higher level than they do for say, CRM or marketing or any other function that's not so data heavy, data driven, and so front and center with the customer. Because if your site is down, if your CRM is down, your marketing engine is down, okay, you're not spamming people with emails, boohoo. But if your site is down, you're losing money. That's like your bread and butter. And so I would really caution people to really go deeper into like how APIs functions when they're selecting vendors. And of course, I wouldn't be saying that if we didn't have excellent APIs, right? So I always like to do a little plug for Kibo.
I think that's a very important point that you made there. And I don't think a lot of people, even developers, think about that it might not break on your side, but the API of your third-party supplier cannot keep up. And then the whole process falls together. So really, really important point there. Let's talk about the hybrid approach. What does that mean and how can you implement this?
Yeah, so hybrid really means having your all-in-one solution alongside your composable solution. And this is where we kind of start to get into like orchestration. And you may want to think about an orchestration engine, or what I call a backend for front end, in addition to whatever your composable is, whatever your backend is. But I think sometimes people get caught up in the front end battle. They'll say, well, this thing gives me 5 different front ends and I want one front end. Like, I'll give you an example. So, obviously because we're fully headless, take a look at our solutions. We have B2B commerce and B2C commerce, but they're not separate products. In reality, B2B commerce is really B2C commerce plus 2 microservices, like account-based pricing, and contacts related to that account. And what's interesting is that there's a ton of B2B commerce use cases, and the B2B industry doesn't think about them as commerce, themselves as commerce. They think of themselves as, this is a reorder portal, or this is a dealer portal, is a very common one, especially if you're a manufacturer. And what happens is, in those use cases, it's not a cut and dry e-commerce experience. You have relationships. It can be complicated. You have buyers, influencers. You have 5, maybe there could be 5 to 10 people influencing that purchasing decision. You have quoting, you have negotiated pricing, you have a whole bunch of different layers. And, one use case that has come up is this concept of a dealer portal. Well, I want my, the manufacturer may sell something. A great example is automotive, and I take a deposit for a new vehicle, but I'm not the ultimate retailer. I'm not the ultimate seller. That needs to go to a dealer, and the dealer needs to do fulfillment. But the dealer is doing more than fulfillment. They're closing the sales cycle. And so you think about that complex use case and you say, well, the dealer needs to be able to log in and see their accounts and contacts. They also need to see their orders. And they need to have almost like OMS light functionality. And like, I feel like I'm like totally losing your question. I don't know if I'm even like answering your question, but I'm gonna wrap it up and see if this is relevant. But in that situation, you want to think creatively and say, well, then I need a dealer portal. And what is the solution that's going to support? Where can I pull in a little bit of OMS and a little bit of e-commerce to create a headless UI that is exactly what gives my dealers the control that they need, the insight that they need, without sharing like orders from other dealers, so other dealers can't steal them, right? So we don't want to give them full control. So sometimes you get into there's a ton of situations like this. Sometimes it's called micrositing, right? So micrositing could be the terminology for like, I have a lot of sellers that are independent. And that could be a dealer, that could be an MLM, right? That could be a doctor's office in the United States. That's huge. So there's all kinds of unique use cases that we don't really think about as commerce that really benefit from headless, because headless gives you that flexibility to say, okay, well, we're going to keep using your existing system for ERP or OMS, but now we need a dealer portal. How are we going to make that? And it's actually an e-commerce technology, which is wild. Like, that's the beauty about the e-commerce world in general. Is there's tons of industries and tons of places, and I used to do industry go-to-market, that don't think of themselves as, don't think of the solution as being commerce, but in reality, it is commerce. Yeah, and if I may continue, I remember this during the pandemic. If you remember, there were pandemic vaccine signups, right? And if you remember, you went to go in, and you were like, okay, well, I'm going to book this appointment, and a lot of those systems were built on. Not on commerce tech stacks. Okay. So, and how you could tell is because they ended up having to give you waiting rooms. So you were put in a waiting room because the system was overloaded. So when we think about booking and appointments, we don't think e-commerce. And so because we don't think e-commerce, we're brought down to the scale level into a different system that is not meant to handle the volume that e-commerce is going to handle. So like my big pitch at the time was like, why are we not? We should really be using an e-commerce platform to handle vaccine signups. Because think about it, having a ton of people access your site is exactly like the holiday peak season. And what is the system that can handle the holiday peak season? Commerce platforms, right? And what's great about commerce platforms, as you know, you can build anything on them, including bookings, right? So why didn't we just host that on e-commerce platforms? So that was a use case that I was like kind of like really pushing at the time, but I don't think anybody executed on that. That's just the downside of of thinking ahead, I guess.
But it's a good example. And I had a discussion this morning with someone who is running a DTC brand. And he was adamant. He said, yeah, I only do B2C. And we said, no, at some point you're also doing B2B, but you might not recognize it. And I think that's the charm of having a system like Composable Emails, which basically you compose your framework with the tools you need to grow. And as I said, e-commerce has a strong back end, can deal with a lot of traffic coming in. And I think that's a good solution for that. Now, I want to touch a little bit on AI, and I know you also have patents. Tell me how much you can tell me about it, and what do you think AI will do?
Yeah, I can tell you my first one, which is already out there. You can if anybody's interested, I have here's my patent cube in the background, but you can go on my LinkedIn profile and see the briefing. That was actually inspired by the automotive industry. So I spent some time working on automotive, like car buying experiences. And I worked with a client who I shall not name, but they were really struggling with understanding whether or not their promotions were effective. And so they would, as you know, people would say, okay, let's pull ahead these car sales and let's give dealers $500 towards existing deals. But then they wouldn't be able to tell whether or not they had actually created net new sales or if they just lost margin because those sales were already going to close and they just gave those customers a discount. And so they had no way to look at their ROI. So actually my first patent is really around generative promotions. So how can we generate a promotion based on its highest ROI? And so this is not exact personalized one-on-one promotions. It's distinct from that because we don't want to create a situation in which we execute. We may not want to have in certain industries completely variable pricing. I'll give you an example. You definitely, if you and I were shopping from the same grocery store, I don't want to see a different price for bread than you just because we're in a different socioeconomic bracket. Like that's going to start a revolution basically, right? So there are definitely situations in which you do not want variable pricing. And so for those highly regulated industries, what you want to do is you want to do bucketing. And so you want to still be able to say define audiences, qualifying criteria so that everybody who falls in this qualifying criteria can benefit from this promotion. And so it was a way of understanding your audiences, bucketing them, grouping them in terms of ROI, seeing if that promotion would stick, and then iterating on that and continuing to refine the promotion so that they weren't a waste of money. And I think an automotive industry is a huge place where they, when I was talking to them, I realized that this was really a technical challenge. It was just something that they couldn't execute. It wasn't something that they were like inept at executing. They were truly missing a piece of technology that they just didn't have to even understand promotion. So that was sort of my first AI-based patent. And the other was, I wish I could speak to it, but I can't until it's pending, then I can speak to it.
No worries at all. Let's come back to Composable Commerce. Obviously, you gave already a very good overview what it is, how it works, what kind of benefits and advantages it has. What advice would you give to someone who wants to look into it, is a beginner or has just some basic understanding?
I think this is one of the situations where Composable used to be really the domain of the technical consumer and the technical buyer, but it's moving more into the business domain. And I think we really need to understand the business drivers behind why you want to go composable and how is composable going to help you get there. So I talked about it, incremental innovation is a huge one, being able to access new functionality. That's a big, being able to do innovation without overhaul. And also TCO, saving on existing, existing software systems if you're sort of going with a cheaper one or a more nimble one. I think if you're launching in a new area, especially if you're going into a new region where your current functionality may not support it, or you might need extra, different connectors, different gateways, that's an excellent time to take a look at maybe I can set up a composable site, or you're doing a pop-up experience or a holiday experience, sometimes bifurcating from your main site and creating a separate holiday experience, or even creating two different experiences gives you redundancy, right? It also, makes sure that your site might be faster. Composable and headless, especially sometimes, may operate much faster than a traditional storefront in an all-in-one solution. So those are all excellent reasons to look at composable. And then just, upskilling, ongoing training, ongoing maintenance is also another reason to look at composable.
Mm-hmm. Is there any kind of homework beside of that the merchant has to do to get started?
Well, so I'll tell you one thing. Take a look at our OMS buyer's guide. We have a ton of, and we also have Kibo Academy. So Kibo Academy is amazing. It's all self-service, online, video-oriented. The trainer is Ty Sweet. So he is an amazing employee here at Kibo. So obviously you can come to me, ping me. This is not scary, right? And the information really is out there. We're part of the MAC Alliance. The MAC Alliance is really a good gold star of what's a good standard for composable and headless. And so you can take a look at those members that are part of the MAC Alliance. And I'm sure the MAC Alliance as well has a ton of meetups, a ton of content and conversation. I will say a composable project is going to require a business and tech team. It's not solely business, not solely tech. I think sometimes we get mired in like technical details, but we really need to stand back and think about the customer experience and what is the ideal customer experience that we want to deliver. So oftentimes, if you consider your customers' path as they're going through today, that's something I've done with a lot of clients, is just like, hey, what's your ideal path? What's it like now? Where do we need to improve? And then that can really sort of give you a good framework for where to add pieces, take away pieces, how to streamline your experience.
Mm-hmm. I like that you explained it with pieces. I'm a big fan of bringing puzzle pieces together. So I like the flexibility there, and that it really can create a solution that really fits the seller, the brand. Before our coffee break comes to an end today, is there anything that you want to share with our listeners that we haven't spoken about?
As I'm here, I haven't been at Kibo for very long, maybe like a month, and I'm really, really so far impressed with the company and the product. There's a lot here that, for example, PIM is a big one. So I think people are looking at PIM in a new way. And I think that there's a lot of product discovery work out there. This concept of product, is my product discoverable? Is my product discoverable by a GPT or an agent engine? Can I publish to marketplaces? Marketplaces are huge. Can I take orders from marketplaces? So those are all considerations. And so I think sometimes we get Sometimes you may want best of breed for everything, but sometimes you may want just good enough, because that good enough can get you so far without that extra cost. So I think those are pieces for people to consider for sure. And obviously here at Kibo, we have those solutions. So I'd highly recommend, if you want to reach out to me, talk to me, I'm available on LinkedIn.
Okay, excellent. Where can people find out more about you guys?
KiboCommerce.com. I should know. We're redoing the website, but there's a lot of information there on my LinkedIn, linkedin.com/Nat Pavić, and on our LinkedIn social as well with the handle KiboCommerce. So you feel free to reach out there.
Cool. I will put all the links in the show notes, and you're just one click away. And I hope a lot of people reach out to you and learn more about what you guys do. And if they grow, they should go with you. Nat, thanks so much for your time today. Let's stay in contact, and thanks so much.
Thank you.